All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Crypto 101 podcast. I am your co-host, Bryce Paul, as always joined by my good buddy, my notorious compadre, Mr. Brendan Viehman, reigning from the crazy, rainy, hurricane-y state of Florida. How are you doing, man?
I am doing great.
survived.
It is finally not raining, and it is beautiful. That kind of hurricane pushed a nice cold front in here. I'm wearing long sleeves in South Florida today.
Cozy.
Happy as a clam, no pun intended for us South Floridians. But nah, Bryce, I am so stoked for our podcast that we got today. This is a very familiar face to us. Hopefully it's pretty familiar to the listeners as well, because this is a group. This is a company that we reference a lot when it comes to data. They have some of the best insights inside the entire crypto market. So we are stoked to welcome Messari.
Yes, a familiar name, but this is the first time that I think Eric and I have ever met, and I think probably for yourself as well. So Eric Turner is the CEO of Messari. He previously worked at Fidelity, Standard & Poor's, S&P. Standard & Poor's is something that we don't want any of our listeners to ever be, but they're a renowned company, S&P 500. You guys know them. But Eric Turner, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing? And just welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I am actually in London right now, so I flew in. I'm usually based in New York, so doing this from a lovely hotel room in the background, but excited to be with you guys.
And we appreciate you staying up a little late for us tonight, and hopefully we make it well worth your while. Messari is a company that I've been, using and tracking for a long time, watching the insights that you guys provide on Twitter, Telegram, all sorts of stuff. And so from the outset, just as a fan, thanks for all the hard work and development and incredible products that you guys have been pushing out. But would love to know a little bit about, the founding story of Messari. And I know Ryan Selkis is the founder who recently, I believe, left. And so maybe a little bit about the founding story and how you kind of came up as the CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for using the product. Always nice to know that it's useful to people.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's why we built it. So we started the company back in January of 2018. And Messari was really born from the idea of, if you look back in 2017, this was kind of when we saw the first big bubble of outside capital flowing into projects. Previously it was mostly Bitcoin, then it was some altcoins. 2017 is when you saw ICOs become popular, and projects were raising 10, 20, $40 million, which back then was a lot of money. And there wasn't necessarily any transparency or accountability into how are they spending this money? Are they actually going to execute on the roadmap? Who's behind this thing? I mean, back when we had ICOs, it was, I'm just going to send some ETH to this address, and then in 6 months, maybe I'll get some tokens back. I mean, there wasn't much more to it. So we started the company actually initially as what we thought of as being almost the Edgar for crypto. So, in finance, and it's not really just finance, but in businesses in the US, everything goes through the Edgar system. And this is what the SEC uses. This is how we track quarterly reporting from companies. This is how we track when they go public. All of the information for investors is in this system. And when we started Messari back in the day, the idea was to build it as a registry of information on projects, bring disclosures and transparency to the space. And that overarching mission of transparency it's really never left. It's always been centered to what we do, going back 6 years now at this point, starting with transparency purely on the disclosure side, building that out to better data, more transparent data, more transparency into what's happening on different projects and different protocols. We really see that, as being core to what's going to help this industry move forward. It's not necessarily this specific data set or this specific, sector. It is overall, as we want more people to come in this space, be it institutions or individual users, they're going to want to know what they're interacting with.
Yeah. And Edgar, for those of you guys who might be hearing this for the first time, it's a database. It stands for Electronic Data Gathering Analysis and retrieval. And I had to look that up just kind of actually while you were talking about it, because I was like, I had always heard about Edgar and known about it. All these public companies are listed. They have all their, information and everything. But this is actually, something that I believe the government mandates public companies to register with. And so you're saying, hey, why don't we have all of the decentralized blockchains kind of have some kind of disclosure standard? Is that right?
That's where we started. I think we've probably refined that model a little bit over time. So I think when you look at blockchains in general, right, the very unique thing here is there's built-in transparency for most of them. So you
Right.
see what's happening on chain. You can start to build financial statements. You really don't need somebody to disclose these numbers. And what we realized pretty quickly on is, in a lot of cases, there won't be somebody to disclose these numbers. A project's going to be decentralized. There's not some CFO sitting there.
Right.
A foundation might have a CFO, but there's not a CFO of a protocol that's sitting there and publishing these on a quarterly basis. So we've actually worked now to build out what we call our protocol services division. And we actually look at it as something where we do a lot of this for protocols themselves. So we'll go through, we'll put together all of the fundamental information. We'll pull everything from the blockchain. We'll put together what you'd see the equivalent be in, like, you look at Edgar filings and you look like what a normal business would update. It would be changes that happened over the past quarter. It'd be corporate governance and things like that. We have a lot of parallels in crypto where we have governance. We have all of these things happening off chain. We try to piece all of that together in a quarterly report. So we've pivoted from thinking of it as like a project's going to disclose this information to really, most of this information's out there. How do we piece it together and make it presentable for communities, investors, whoever it is?
Definitely. Eric, one of the things that I saw that you all just wrapped up was the Messari Mainnet conference. So I just want to hear from your perspective, like what happened there, how'd it go? Give us the key takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this was our 5th year of doing Mainnet. So this was actually a conference we started in the depths of COVID. It was remote first. So we made the mistake the first year of thinking we could do a conference that went from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m., 3 days in a row, because we were trying to capture everyone in the world. We did it. It certainly wasn't fun doing that 12 hours a day and then trying to get some work done afterwards. But after we did it the first year remote, we decided to host it in New York, because at that time, there weren't any big crypto conferences in New York. We'd had Consensus there previously, but as we know, they moved to Austin. There weren't really any of these big anchor crypto events. And I think New York's so important at the end of the day for this industry. It's this funny thing where the US isn't exactly friendly towards crypto, and New York specifically is kind of, more hostile in some cases than the US. Yeah. But you look at the people in New York and you have a vibrant developer community. You have all of these founders. I mean, I can go to a WeWork and bump into, 30 crypto people when I'm in the city. And then you also have all of the, big institutions that have always been interested in crypto, always been trying to figure out where they're going to fit in. And for us, we wanted to bring all those people together. So Mainnet's really focused on bringing all of the crypto builders and all of the institutions and the enterprises together in one place where they can just talk about, everything that we're building and what the future looks like for the industry. So this year was the same. A lot of great founders. We had BlackRock and Apollo and kind of the who's who of the institutional space. Even had some Senate candidates there. We had Whip Tom Emmer, who's always a great speaker, just about how things are going in DC on the crypto side. So overall, great success. We were excited to host it in New York now for the 4th time in person and bring all those people together.
Awesome.
And it's almost ironic that there's not more of this happening in New York, because when you think of like the financial capital of the world, you think of Wall Street. And so I guess my brain would immediately go to say, or go to think, why isn't there more of this happening? But then you brought up a really good point that it might not necessarily be the most friendly place towards crypto. The cool thing here is I think that that's changing. You mentioned Apollo, you mentioned BlackRock. A lot of these key TradFi figures are now starting to become increasingly more crypto, especially Larry Fink from BlackRock, talking about his tokenization dreams and everything that he thinks is going to happen there. And I think that we're starting to see, and honestly, not even starting, I think we've already seen the turning point, and now it's going to start getting better and better for crypto. And so my kind of hope here is that you all have been spearheading the charge when it comes to these conferences in New York, but I want to see a lot of other big ones start to pop up. You know, we see them in Vegas, we see them in Cali, we see them in Miami and some of these other places. But I hope that New York starts to not only become a lot more crypto friendly, but as we see more adoption from these ETF and TradFi institutions, I want to see more development happening there, because that is what people, as at least as of right now, think of as kind of like the financial capital of the world.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think you look at and again, we can probably talk about this as an entire podcast, but when you look at just the regulatory climate in the US right now, if I'm a large exchange and I'm not based in the US, or I'm a large project in the DeFi sector, for example, and I'm not based in the US, I'm probably a little scared to come to a conference, honestly, sponsor a conference, in New York, in the US. So I think we'll start to see that shift, but it really is going to come down to where we are on regulation and just policy and kind of that temperature in the US in general.
Yeah. And when you mentioned that you had, all these names in there, what was their kind of general consensus of what's happening in crypto? Because the way that we view it, right, we're a little bit biased. We're all crypto natives. We really do believe in this thing long term. But I'm curious, what was their kind of take on everything that's happening in the crypto market right now, and maybe the kind of direction that they see this going?
Yeah, the past year has been a really interesting market, I think. You really start to see the separation between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto. So obviously a lot of the conversations from an institutional perspective they've been around Bitcoin, Bitcoin ETFs. You look at the markets over the past year, I mean, we've seen the price of Bitcoin go up, and then you almost kind of just have this gap in the middle, even with, the large caps, and you have Solana's doing okay, Ethereum's kind of, flat.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have the other side of the market where institutions aren't even paying attention. I mean, when it was DeFi and there were all these things happening, institutions were really paying attention to this. But what we've seen over the past year is, you get like pockets of like meme coin speculation. And, I think DePin's something that's interesting. That's been a hot sector. There really hasn't been a cohesive narrative from our side as a crypto industry on, okay, Bitcoin, you guys get it. You launch the ETFs, people are buying those. You understand Bitcoin after so many years. Here are the other things we can show you. I don't think we have that yet. So personally, when I think about, people saying bull market, bear market, like where are we right now? I think we're still to some degree in a bear market. I mean, prices have been going up, but I think a lot of that's been dragged forward by Bitcoin. I haven't seen that big catalyst that's going to get us to, where we were in DeFi summer, when it was almost like you had DeFi and NFTs and these things that were interesting, not just to us as crypto natives, but to a massive audience.
Yeah, it seems like those massive audiences, the things that spread most viral and get most sort of digitally native people excited about crypto are the meme coins, and it's pretty crazy. And I know you're laughing, and people who aren't following along on YouTube might not be able to see that, but low key shout out, go check us out on YouTube. But no, I mean the meme coins are pretty crazy, right? I mean these things have gone up sometimes double overnight. 3 times overnight, and I've even seen them go up 50 times in a week. And that, just the fact that you even say that, and you're like, oh, like this is a common occurrence across the world. Like you got, it perks people up, and like what's kind of your take on this whole phenomenon coming from a company that runs a lot of data analysis? You see the wallet holder distribution, you see engagement activity across chains. Do you have like a hot take on this phenomenon, or what do you kind of think about it?
I don't know if I necessarily have a hot take on meme coins. I think, it is a localized speculative bubble within the industry. So what my take is, from what I see, is this is not something that's necessarily bringing new capital into the space. A lot of the meme coins it's people that have been in crypto. It's people kind of that maybe caught the last meme coin wave. They're getting back into it now. They've been doing some other investing, but we're not at the point, as far as I've seen, where we have funds coming in and deploying capital for meme coins specifically. For, again, when you had DeFi or a big narrative like that, you have outside capital, people that aren't crypto native coming in, setting up 100, 200, $500 million funds to invest in this space. We're not going to get that. I think meme coins are fun, and I get it, and I get why it is a great use case for crypto too. Permissionless, spin something up, everyone can start using it, trading it, whatever it is. But it's not going to be the thing to get us to that next big bull market, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's just interesting, as somebody who's been here for really, like yourself, the better part of a decade. It's just kind of a cool phenomenon to look at. But let's kind of stay focused on Messari and the things that you guys are really proud of, and the things that you guys do for your customers. And for somebody who's listening, the Crypto 101 audience, it's a global audience. Just like crypto, all around the world, people are kind of looking to trade crypto, invest in the best cryptos and stuff. How can somebody who's hearing about you guys for the first time, kind of like, what can they expect if they go to Messari.io and check out the dashboard of different tools? How do kind of retail investors best leverage the platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll take a step back just in terms of how our business is set up and how we think of it. So Messari really is meant to be a full stack market intelligence product. So on one side, we have, our light tier, which is basically $10 a month. You can come in and get access to our basic tools. On the other side, you have our enterprise tier, which is going to be large hedge funds, crypto exchanges, custodians, wallets. What I love about that, though, is that we can basically create, unique experiences based on where people come into the product. So to your point, on that light tier, you come in as a retail user. What's the value out of Messari? And I think, if I'm coming in and I'm an individual, I'm just looking to invest. What's Messari going to give me that I'm not going to get just from going to like CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, just a free pricing site? And what we offer, I think, and where we across everything we do try to focus is combining everything happening in the markets with context on why that matters and everything else that is happening. So you can go somewhere, you can see price moved like this, you can see on-chain transactions moved like this. What we try to do across the board is explain why, add all of that context. So you can come in and we have things like our real-time AI-powered news feed that's going to give you all of the summaries on everything happening in a day. We have AI project recaps now where it goes through all of our database, and you can go in and say, hey, I'm holding Solana, for example, like what's happened over the past 30 days? Because I noticed the price started to move. And we'll go through 30 terabytes of data on our side, and we'll just give you a very quick summary, pulling from the news, Twitter, Telegram, our on-chain data sources. I mean, really anywhere that there's data, and it'll give you a quick picture of, hey, this is what happened over the past 30 days. So we try to make it easy for anybody. And you come in and, that new user could be somebody who's just investing in crypto for the first time. It could be somebody who runs a multinational bank who's just starting their crypto journey as well. We just want to make it easy for people to understand everything that's happening in the market and the industry. And that really is combining that quantitative and qualitative side of things.
Yeah. And is there also information around kind of, as people in our industry would refer to it as the tokenomics? And it's basically, the economics or the kind of, how the entire kind of community accounts for the total supply and inflation schedule of the tokens. Is that something that Messari can kind of analyze for people?
Yeah, so we have a few tools. So we have our token unlocks tool, which is going to cover all of the unlocks, the vesting, the supply. Really, when you look at a lot of token economics or tokenomics, the supply itself early on is what matters for a lot of these projects. And our tool allows you to go through, see the vesting schedule, map that to price. So again, you can overlay price on all of these things. You can go through and you can see all of the news and intelligence events we have, overlay price there. So you can kind of see what's moving something. It's going to differ between different tokens. We have a very robust fundraising database. So again, if I'm coming in and I'm thinking about something I could be interested in, I could look at all of the projects that have raised recently in the gaming sector that don't have a live token yet. As an investor, that could be something really interesting for me to keep an eye on, and we allow you to filter through all of that. And then I think the biggest thing for us is, we probably have the deepest research library in the space at this point. So we have expert analysts that are using all of these tools and again, tying it together and kind of giving you that takeaway. So what matters on the token unlock side, what you should be watching out for. Is there a certain cliff size? Is there a certain month where it matters more? All of that analysis, sure, you can come do it in Messari, but we also want to provide that for you as a user through our research team.
Yeah, I mean, data and knowledge truly is power. And one of my favorite times of the year is when we get those end of year industry reports that Messari puts out, and they come out on just about every single vertical. And so as you compile that data for 2025, has anything stuck out to you so far? Because I know that you mentioned DePIN a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at some of the top themes, so I'm not going to say top sectors, but some of the top themes that we've seen through this year. Again, I'm just going to shill it. There's actually a topic analysis tool on Messari, and you can go through and it creates a heat map for you. So anyone can check that out on Messari.io. But when we look at the crypto side of it, I think this is going to be obvious to a lot of people, but I think DePIN, meme coins, and then I guess it really boils down to L2s, but it's really basically scalability we've seen be the big topics. Outside of that, it's just been regulation, and I not just regulation, but like regulation and everything happening in the courts. Like I'm looking, I just looked at our topic analysis the other day. This is from what people are talking about, what's in the news. So I didn't want to say just sectors because there's crypto sectors and then there's the macro side of it as well. And I don't think that should be a surprise for anyone.
Well, I think that's just. I mean, that's at the top of a lot of people's minds here, because just in the last week or two, there has been so many different forms of regulatory, can we call it shenanigans, that have kind of come up between the SEC and different crypto companies.
You can call it shenanigans.
I mean, we've seen it in the past, right? I mean, we've seen it with Kraken, we've seen it with Binance, we've seen it with Coinbase, who is publicly approved to be, or was approved to be, a publicly traded company in the US, then were immediately sued by the SEC, who approved them. And then now we're seeing it with a bunch of other situations, with the SEC appealing the XRP case. We saw them giving Crypto.com a Wells notice. We saw Cumberland DRW getting into the mix. We saw Binomial trying to sue back at the SEC. And that's all within the last 2 weeks or so. So I think that it's just that it's on a lot of people's minds, because from the conversations that we've had with many of those companies, never once have they come to us and go, guys, we don't want to be regulated. That sounds boring. It's always the opposite. They said, we want to be as regulated as possible. We want to obey the law. We want our products and our services to be with as many customers as possible. We just think that we're doing it the right way, and there's not clear guidelines on this to kind of make everything easy on us. So we do our best to do that, but we want just clear-cut regulation, and we want to be able to work with these governments, specifically the US, on this stuff. And that's the big thing that we've seen. And we know that if the institutions are saying that, then the people want to see that as well, because this is one of those things that benefits everyone. If there is clear regulation and everyone can be regulated, well, that means that the customers are happier. That means that the markets are going to be performing better. The customers don't have these uncertainties of, is my exchange safe? Can I use this exchange this year but not next year? Can I own this cryptocurrency this year but not next year? We've seen that happen with a couple of projects. And from the institutional side, they benefit as well, because they're looking at this. And if this does get cleared up, then they're spending a lot less on legal fees. They're able to focus on more innovative, newer, cooler products that we might not have seen before, that we might not have access to before. And it's one of those scenarios where both parties wins, both the institutions and kind of the average retail trader or investor as well. So I just had to go on my little tangent there, because what you said, it really does hit so deep at home. And I think that there's a lot of people in crypto that feel the exact same way, and they're curious about this stuff and they want to see it get cleared up.
Yeah, and it's it's not like the industry's begging for regulation. We're not going to DC every day and saying like we just want to be regulated no matter what.
Yes.
But we've had nothing for years now at this point, where you don't know what you could be. And we've seen this. If you look at some of the companies that have been sued by the SEC, you could do everything the best way you think. You could, really try to protect consumers. You could have great compliance teams, and you could still get in trouble because there is no clarity there. So again, when we think about the institutional side of things, they're the same way, where we aren't going to see a lot of forward progress until we have some clarity. And now maybe this is a weird world we live in now, where some of this clarity just comes because of all the lawsuits happening and the courts make some of these decisions for us. But I still think Congress is going to need to do something long term if we want to have crypto be successful in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when we get that clarity, I think the whole crypto industry skyrockets, not just price. I think adoption, I think price, I think even the technology and the way that we use it, the way that it's integrated, I think all of that skyrockets once we get a little bit more clarity there.
Yeah, and hopefully it's as soon as November 5th or January 1st or whenever, when we potentially get a little bit of a shakeup here. But the jury's still out. We'll certainly see. I'm hopeful that regardless of which way the ball breaks on the election, that people will realize that crypto's here to stay and it needs some guidelines. But kind of moving forward, what is Messari working on right now and headed towards? Maybe any big product lines, big launches, any pivots that you want to announce? What's kind of in the pipeline?
So I think the biggest, or the coolest thing actually was the release that we had during our Mainnet event for our AI Copilot. So this is an awesome tool. It's not like we just took some LLM and just kind of slapped it on and said, look at this cool little chatbot that we built out. We actually spent the past year on the engineering side building and structuring something that's going to be a unique crypto research and discovery tool. And again, getting back to what I said before, it's the context around everything. It's not just returning a quick bite size, here's the data. We want to provide context with everything that we surface on our site. So this AI Copilot, we went through, restructured our entire data warehouse. I think we have about 30 terabytes of data right now backing this thing. And it's really powerful. You can ask it questions. You can have it create charts and tables for you. And all of it's crypto specific. So you're just going to get a level of depth you're not going to get anywhere else. And it's updated in real time. So something happened 15 minutes ago. It's going to be in our system. You can ask about it. I've asked it about, I see a hack on an exchange. I see something happening on Twitter. It gives me the answer. It's pretty cool to play around with. And again, anyone can go check that out on Messari. We've got some preloaded questions in there, so you can try that out. And that's really, I think, our big thing right now. Outside of continuing, I mentioned the 2 business lines that we're working on. So that is our market intelligence product, and then our protocol services and quarterly reporting. We have some really cool stuff. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this because I don't know if I'm supposed to announce it yet. But on our protocol services side, we're going to be working on some really interesting, we call them protocol portals, and they are essentially real-time dashboards, not just data dashboards like you might see on existing solutions today. Everything a community could want. So you could go in and you could see all of the news on Solana, for example, research reports, financial statements, you name it. These are going to be free. They're going to be accessible to communities. So I'm really excited to have those come out in the next couple months.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to Messari, there's a lot of ways that people can use it. I guess I'm curious, do you have any kind of metrics on what maybe the most used features are? Or even, I guess, what you think some of the most important metrics are that you all track?
Yeah, I do a lot of analysis on this, obviously, to kind of see where we should be leaning in more for our users and where maybe there are some things that, people just don't find useful.
Right.
It's been hard to find what people don't find useful because it always kind of, again, gets intertwined with everything else when you're trying to find an answer. I think when you look at a crypto data product, market data, blockchain data, that's kind of just table stakes, right? Like people need that because that is where they're going to start their journey. They're going to see the price move. They're going to see something happening on chain. We see a lot of people using our qualitative tools though. So that is, we have an intelligence feed covering about 65 on and off chain events happening on protocols. We cover about 500 protocols and networks on that. That's probably one of our most used features. So that could be everything from I'm sitting at an exchange and there's a software release coming up. I need to know about it so our systems don't go offline. We'll notify you. Could be just as an investor talking about recent token unlocks, new fundraising events that are coming up, people at the team that have left. It really covers kind of anything you'd want to know. And we see that be useful again because it combines the off-chain world and the non-market data world with everything happening on chain and in the market. And then our users love our research across the board. Again, I think a lot of people, you have a lot of power users who are going to go in, they're going to set up their dashboards, they're going to set up their alerts, they're going to really go and just do their own analysis. And then you have a lot of people that just want to come in and say what should I know, right? A Messari analyst is spending all this time. They're doing this day after day. What do they think is important right now? And that's where a lot of the research, a lot of the AI tools, those become really heavily used by our users across the board.
Yeah, it's really almost like Bloomberg for crypto specifically. I mean, because you could get sort of that intelligence and sort of the analysis, the written pieces, the visual pieces that are done for you, and then the tools to kind of do your own research. And it gives people a lot of flexibility.
I like the Bloomberg for crypto. I've come around on it. I mean, as you mentioned, I worked at S&P before Messari, and we had a competing tool with Bloomberg. So it took me a few years to finally come around and admit, all right, everyone knows Bloomberg. No one's really talking about S&P Cap IQ. So Bloomberg for crypto, it is.
Yeah, well, hey, you've got a lot of market intelligence, a lot of market data. I think everybody, I know myself included, we always want to know. I mean, what does that data tell you about where we're at in the market right now? Maybe even from your experiences, whether you're trying to raise money and your viewpoint in the private markets and where people are, just the conversations that you're kind of having with different projects. Holistically, like where are we at right now in the market cycle, and how are you kind of posturing your company and getting your team, perspective over the course of the next year?
Well, after being in this space for 8 years now, about the one thing I know to be true consistently is that things change almost immediately. So I think,
True.
when I look at where we are in the market right now, I do think we're seeing a lot of strength with Bitcoin price, with some of the large caps. I do think that those have been pretty stable, and we're set up, I think, right now for if a few things go the right way, if it's the election, if it's some other things, I really do start to think that we actually do see a bull market again. The other side of it, though, is interesting because you mentioned the private markets, and you mentioned, and I mentioned this as well, we see a lot of this growth come when people are starting to get really excited about crypto and they're setting up investment vehicles where they can put tens, hundreds of millions of dollars into private companies, into projects, whatever it may be. We haven't quite seen, and fundraising numbers have been okay, but I think at a higher level, when we just look at the private investing and venture capital world today, there hasn't been a lot of capital deployed, or funds aren't out raising new rounds and starting new funds to deploy capital. And it's kind of just this, again, macro thing where there haven't been a ton of IPOs. And because there haven't been a ton of IPOs, investors haven't gotten a lot of money back. They don't have that money and that dry powder back in their fund. So we're kind of just seeing this prolonged cycle where I think token projects that are eventually going to have a token and they're a network or a protocol, they've been able to raise money. I think there's this other side of it, though, where there is so much potential to grow crypto infrastructure companies, crypto data companies, the private companies that are never going to have a token. I think when we see the markets come back, we're going to see two things. We're going to see some big rounds go into those crypto data providers and infrastructure providers. And we're also going to see some consolidation in the space. So what I think happens is once we start to see IPOs hit the market, once we start to see VCs get a little bit more dry powder, money they can spend, and we start to see crypto prices go back up, we're going to see not only M&A activity, but I think we're going to see some really interesting combinations where it's not just people acquiring their competitors and consolidating in that sense, but we're going to see some different types of crypto platforms come together and build some really unique new solutions. That's my guess for, let's call it, the next year or two.
Yeah, and I agree entirely. And one of the things I'm kind of keen on seeing play out, and just not excited, but I don't know, just curious, because it seems like every time there's a big IPO, for instance, like when Coinbase IPO'd, it was like the exact top of the market back in like March of 2021. And then it's like right when we got the ETFs for Ethereum, like the market dumped, right when we got the futures for Bitcoin and market dumped. And so it's like there's another big liquidity event potentially for Circle, right? USDC, the kind of the founders and the operators of the USDC token company called Circle. They're rumors they're going to IPO for several $billions. And so I'm curious, have you heard about anything going on with Circle and kind of how that might impact the market?
I mean, everyone's expecting them to IPO next year. I think they got close a couple years ago. I think they pulled that registration, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if I have to look at a list of candidates right now of crypto companies that could go public, they certainly seem like the top contender. And I know that that's been the rumor, that they're going to IPO over the next year. And then I think you'll probably see maybe an exchange or two go public again, maybe one of the larger infrastructure providers, but nothing's going to happen unless we get some clarity here in the US on the regulatory side. And, I think the market going up is always going to help as well.
Yeah. No, I would be very curious to see how that ends up, helping them expand their footprint. I also saw Tether talking about, what was so interesting about Tether was like they were one of the most profitable companies in the world. They made like $5.5 billion or something last year, and they've got like 100 or something people, 100 or 200 people working for them. Like BlackRock has 100,000 people working for them and didn't even do as much profit, which I thought was a funny comparison I saw on Twitter. But as another stablecoin company, I heard they might become like a decentralized sort of bank lender to like commodities people. Do you guys see this? Any insight on this? Because I thought that was kind of getting a lot of news press. I think it was even this morning.
I saw something about that. It's been really interesting with Tether, right? They have gone from, the perception that they're kind of just trying to struggle to find a bank behind the scenes, and it's all a little, yeah, it's something, right? It's something, and now they're one of the largest holders of U.S. Treasuries, and it's clear they have all of this cash, and they're trying to figure out something to do with it. And again, is this going to work? What are the details of it? I don't know, but I saw that, and I certainly thought it was a pretty interesting concept. Again, it's like we're not necessarily actually going through and disrupting financial services with a crypto token or something like that. It just happens to be a crypto company doing it.
Yeah. And they've got the stamp of approval of trading legends like Howard Lutnick, from Cantor Fitzgerald, who are kind of backing them and saying, yeah, like these guys are legit, they're buttoned up. And so one of the Wall Street titans given a stamp of approval. So I think that a little goes a long way there. And I'm excited. One of the things we like to ask everybody who comes on the show is just like outside of anything you're working on directly, or anything that maybe you're affiliated with or invested in. Like what's one crypto company or crypto protocol or project that you think is really stand out and that our listeners could maybe go research and check out as well?
Ooh.
Changing the industry in a big way.
That's a good question. I think if I had to shout out any crypto companies right now, it would be Ripple, Coinbase, Kraken, and all of the companies fighting in the courts for the future of this industry. I mean, I think when you think about making a change, that's going to mean something over the next year.
Yeah, and, those guys are literally going not just going to bat for us, but going to war for us. And seriously, that's a great call out.
And I think that regardless of whether you like those companies, whether you like those projects, whether you use them, I think most people can agree that we want them to win. Even if you don't invest in XRP, even if you don't like them, even if you don't have a Kraken account, even if you don't, fill in the blank, you want these companies to win because of the precedent and the standard that it sets for the industry, because a win for them is a win for all of crypto. And so that's what I try to tell people is, people beef that they're a maximalist in one end of the space or in the other. But at the end of the day, we're all part of crypto, and we want to see these regulatory battles won.
Yeah, totally. Eric, what's the last thing you want our listeners to remember about Messari and where you guys are headed?
Messari is going to have the answer for any question you have in crypto. So you should go check out our AI tools at messari.io. And my Twitter is Eric TURNR, Eric Turner without the E in the last name. And if you cannot find your answer, tweet at me and tell me, because I'm very confident that we should have everything.
I love it. That's awesome. That's a great kind of ending note there, Eric. We appreciate you coming on the show. If you guys have any questions, again, check out the show notes. We'll have links to Messari. We'll have links to Eric's Twitter, where you can guaranteed, no, just kidding, but very, very, very close to guarantee, get any question you have about crypto answered at Eric's Twitter and at Messari. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We really do hope to have you back on again soon. Talk about your findings, talk about what things have maybe surprised you as you build out this incredible intelligence platform. But until then, take care.